Hello everyone, this is Steel with Studio Blue. I hope you're having a fantastic evening. Welcome to not RPG Maker Theater, but still RPG Maker stuff with Studio Blue. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening. As you can tell, I'm alone. My redder half had to work late, surprise, 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 but she sends her love to each and every one of you. I want to give a quick shout out to Touch Fuzzy and Komodo / RPG Maker Web for once again letting us do this. And say hello to Wrath of Wood, Kosanimus, I hope I'm saying your name right, Sir Legna, BG, Valkrissa, and, well, literally anyone else who's lurking, watching, jumping in late, or catching us on VOD. Alright, so put your classroom hats on, sit in your desks, get your notebook. Tonight's gonna be a doozy. Hey, Brian, good to see you again from last night. I hope everyone's having a great time. Okay, all right. So, what are we studying tonight? Tonight we are studying one of the most important things you as a game developer need to know. We say that a lot, like you need to learn best practices, you need to learn the user experience, and all of that's true. It's true. You need to push everything towards the UX. You need to give your players the best experience, but you as a developer need to have this piece of documentation down if you want to be a serious dev. And tonight I am talking about the GDD, or the Game Design Document. This is effectively a game Bible. It is used in the industry. It has been used for quite some time. Serious game developers use it. Even for small projects, a truncated version of it is going to be used. And tonight we're going to go over it. Now I want to give a quick disclaimer. There's no way to talk about documentation without it being dry. The GDD is a rather dry topic. I'm going to try to make it interesting with my usual flair. We have some cute PowerPoint presentations that have the slime on it. Try to make this as fun as I can without lingering on any one topic and tell jokes with everyone here in chat. However, this is a dry topic. So, you have been forewarned. Oh, good to see you, Carlos. Hope you're doing fine this evening. Yeah, I hope you feel better, BG. I'm sorry to hear that you're sick. You don't need the number 2 pencils, Valkrissa. You just need a whole lot of patience. All right. Let's jump into this. So, the presentation is going to explain to you what a GDD is and why you need it. Even the hobbyist RPG Maker web developer needs it. Y'all need it. Everybody needs it. We all needs it. We're going to go over the most common GDD categories. There are a lot. We're going to go deeper into those categories. There are a lot. I am monitoring chat in real time. Well, as close to real time as I can. So throw out questions, comments, etc. if you have any. The Scantron machine can't read it if you don't use a number 2 pencil. Oh my god, that brings me to the way back. Jeez Louise. I remember taking those tests and it had to be a number 2 pencil. It had to be just the right amount of dark. Couldn't be too light. Otherwise the Scantron machine wouldn't read it and it would count against you. Because, you got it wrong even though you got it right. Alright, here we go. So what is a GDD? That is the Game Design Document. It is a single document for everything about your game. Everything. I really should put that in bold, underline, and capitals. It's everything. If it relates to your game, from marketing materials to high concepts to sketches that you make on napkins in restaurants because you just can't get the idea out fast enough, all that goes in the GDD. Everything. It is also called a game Bible. It's given that name because it's, this is thy text of the game. It contains everything, even formulas. So your damage formulas, all of that. If you're going to tweak any of the code in the RPG Maker database or any of the plugins, if you're going to make changes, that documentation, all that's there as well. Spreadsheets can be used separate for ease of viewing, thank goodness. So if you have like really complex formulae and such, you can make a spreadsheet, but you link to the spreadsheet, especially if it's like an online Google Sheet, from within the GDD. And most importantly, it's a living document. A lot of people think, well, erroneously think that a GDD is something static. It's not. It changes. It's meant to change. You start off with the bare bones. You know, people have it again, the misconception. Before I start my game, I have to write my GDD. The only time you put a GDD together with verboseness is when you're going to be working in a team. Then you need to get a lot of those ideas out. Like for a project that Studio Blue is working on, we had to put down the GDD for the project before we could approach certain people to work on it with us. That had to be done. If you're doing it by yourself, if you're a solo dev, it's okay to make it up as you go along, because again, you're documenting your process. Let's see. Hello, Valak. I'll call you Valak because I am terrible with names. You have tons of lists and Word documents. No, you got to bring it all together. Got to bring it all together, Valak. It's a GDD when you bring it all together into one master document that's big and filled with stuff and clogs up your hard drive and makes your printer break. That's when you know it's a GDD. Hey, Falcon, good to see you. 32 years old and should get going a game. Is it too late to start learning? It is never too late, Falcon, to start learning. Ever. Not on any circumstances, man. Studio Blue, RPG Maker Web, Driftwood Gaming. There are a bunch of us out there who can teach you everything you need to know about making a game. It is never too late to start, so welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Hey, Wrath, and you can use paper. You can use paper, but at some point I highly recommend transcribing that to a computer, because if something happens to the notebook, you can't send a backup of a notebook to the cloud. If anyone figures out how to do that, let me know. You'll make $1 million. You're going to hear me clearing my throat and drinking a lot of water tonight. Allergies are kicking me at full butt because it's warm here in Houston now. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right. So do you need one? The short answer is yes. Yes, you do. You did. There is no exceptions. Even for a small game that you're making for a game jam, you should have documentation. I was in a game jam back in October, the Hawktober game jam for Hawk Zombie. I did both a solo project by myself and I was part of a team. And in both cases, a GDD was necessary in order to keep things very tightly organized in order to make the deadline. So you need a GDD no matter what. Like, even if it's a small project and you end up having a 5-page GDD, you still need one. It's absolutely mandatory. Absolutely mandatory when you have a team. There is no exception, because you cannot communicate your ideas as easily as a document can, and changing those ideas are a lot easier when you have a central document. So if you're working with your friends over Discord and you need to make a change to your ideas, it's a lot easier to change a document that they can go back and read at any time than it is to have a conversation or a thread on Discord that may get misread or misrepresented or even lost. And then solo, even if it's solo, yeah, documents are necessary. 100%. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Silver. We do our best. We do. Teal and I, we put on the best we can to teach you guys. Okay, so Wrath, hey, if you put photos of your notes, I don't think that's the most secure thing in the world. I really think you should have a Word document, but, hey, if it works for you and you have a way of backing it up, I'm not one to say what's right and wrong. Just please be careful. Don't lose your stuff. All right. And Falcon says, I'm very intimidated by the coding aspect, very little experience with art, so where should I start? Very good concept for a game, but how do I solve this project? There's a lot packed into that question, Falcon. I'll answer what I can, but I've got to obviously move on with the presentation. I'm sure people will be happy to help you. Don't worry about coding. Nowadays, a lot of engines, even things such as Unreal and Unity, allow you to use visual scripting, which makes it a lot easier. Part one. Very little experience with art. You can always either get an artist or use prefabs. Those are things that were created by someone else. And if you have a good concept of game, how do you solve the project? You dive in, play a lot of games, learn how games work by just playing games. talk to people who have made games, watch streams of people who are teaching you how, and just jump in head first, head first, and feet first, and just go at it until whenever it comes out. If it's a piece of doo-doo, that's fine. You just make another one. Just keep doing it. The only way to be a game maker is to make games. All right, here we go. Do I need a fancy template? No, you can use a Word document, or even Notepad. So you don't need a whole lot to make a GDD. We use Microsoft Word and Evernote, as it says right down here. All that matters is the content. The content's all that's important. So organization applications can help. There's a couple of programs that can help. I think Artisy Draft helps you put together a GDD. We own it. We just haven't used it. We probably should. But whatever organizational application you have can be used. So honestly, if you just want to open up MS Word or Open Office's version document, go right ahead. All right, here we go. So we have the most common categories. Do not think you're going to get out of Steel talking by just seeing common categories part 1, because there's several parts to this. I'm going to go over briefly now and then go deeper in a few minutes. So you got to have your title page. That's really important, because the title page gives a indication of what it is that's being going on, what the game is. What's it called? I'm trying to do this in monitor chat, so I'm going to pay attention to my screen for a second. So the title page is important for the people who need to know at a glance what your game is. That's the same thing with the overview. You need to have your story so people know what the story game is. Every game has a story, even the ones that are as simple as Breakout. Even if the story is just your thief is running around in a maze trying to escape the cops while locking doors behind them. That's an old Intellivision/Atari game, by the way. It's a story. A setting, same thing. There is a setting. There are characters. These are the 3 things that you have to have. You have to have this, otherwise you have nothing. So yeah, you got to put those down. Next one, you're going to go deeper. You're going to go into the gameplay. You're going to go into the mechanics. You're going to go into various options. Then you're going to go into how saving and loading works and how replaying works. So all these are the second level of categories that you're going to need to get into. Hey, Kuda Dude, we're talking about the GDD, the game design document. All right. Number 3, are there any cheats? Cheat codes. Intentional. A cheat is an intentional exploit. An exploit is something that your players discover and post on YouTube for everyone's LOLs. Are there any Easter eggs? Are there any special things that by exploration they get to see something cool? If you don't know what an Easter egg is, the very first one in gaming history was an adventure for the 2600 by Warren Robinson, where he put his name in a special room that you could find. Easter eggs are just those fun little things that don't give the player any edge. They're just really cool. The tutorial level, there needs to be something that teaches them how to play. You're going to put your game levels in your game design document. What we won't go over tonight is the level design document. That's the LDD, and that is a specialized document created for the level designers and the programmers for each level. It is assumed that such detail would go into your GDD as an insert. User interfaces. You got to have a user interface. I mean, what is the player going to see? Not necessarily even their HUD, but how are they going to interact with your game? A game that just you load up the executable, it starts playing, there's no HUD, and you're just playing, is going to be very confusing to a player. So at the very least, a start menu, and then some kind of at least a HUD or some indication as to what buttons they need to press to play. That kind of thing. That's the user interface. Okay, continuing along the line here. What game engine are you going to use? So for you guys, an RPG Maker engine. Are you using VX-Ace? Are you using MV? Are you using MZ? What version are you using? So that way, if someone was to jump in and you're saying, well, I'm only using beta 3.2, then they'll know you're using beta branch 3.2. Any programming, this is where you would go over your code. This is where you would list any particular things that you have created specifically for this game. And if you wrote the code, then you would have links to the code itself. Do not put thousands of lines of code in your GDD. If anything is going to be excessively long and detailed, just link it from the GDD out to its external source. GitHub, for example. Game AI. What AI does the game have? If you're creating an RPG Maker game, you're going to have a measure of AI, even if it's just, sprites wander around the map until the player gets close, and then they start chasing them. There's a plugin for that. Or in the troops tab on the database, hey, we're just here's what they're going to do. Here's what these enemies are going to do when they're at level 7. Here's what they do when they're at 50% health. That kind of thing. That's all AI. It may not feel like it's AI, but it is. Anytime the game uses its own internal logic and not something that the player tells it to do in order to accomplish something, that is AI. If it's tied to something like an NPC, enemy, etc. Game art. Put your concept art in here. Link it to your Imager or whatever image sharing service you're using and say, here's our concept art, here's our character art, etc., etc. I would recommend putting the most important pieces of artwork in the GDD itself and then linking to all the other cool stuff outside. Game audio, just as important. Music, sound effects, all of that, voices, all of those things, anything the player can hear needs to be in the GDD. And here's the last bit of categories. Told you, man, this is a lot. Technical specs. What does the player need to have on their computer in order to run? It is not really enough, and it's not really fair just to say, hey, your game will run if it can run RPG Maker. That's not really fair, because that's not the case. I've seen games that made by RPG Maker, usually MV and MZ, that are really powerful and require a bit more juice. So you're going to want to do all that testing. Test your game, find out what its specs are, what it will run on, and then put that in your GDD. Then there's a design plan. Design plan is, this is not a schedule. The schedule comes a little bit later. It's this icon and not this one. The design plan is what the plan is for designing the program. We'll go more into it. Are you going to go through, a full alpha? Are you going to go through early access? That kind of thing. What's the plan for installation and updating? Okay, so when you're installing it, does it work on an installer? Do you just unzip everything into a folder and hit the executable? Updates. Are you updating your game? If so, is it available on Steam? Is it itch.io? Is there a self-installer? These are things that you want to document specifically so that you, the developer, will know what your plan is, so that you can implement it and actually make it happen. Proposed schedule. You don't have to follow through with this. This is more for internal than external. If you're working with an investor, trust me, you're going to have a project manager, who might be you, with a much more refined, to the bone schedule for development and release. And then lastly, an asset list. This includes credits. So for all of you making those RPG Maker games out there, if you're using community assets, put them on your asset list here. Put who did it so you can properly credit them. Please don't use community assets and don't credit people. That is just skeevy. Before we move on, I'm going to catch up with chat. Ooh, got a lot of people there. Hold on, let me wet my whistle. Okay. So yeah, RPG Maker's on sale. Grab it now. Absolutely. If you can get MZ, get it. Get it. It's a great program. We're making top tier maps in it last night. Cool. So let's see. Human being. Hey, it's Human. Good to see you, man. Yes, you love the GDDs, right? Almost as much as you love starting them and failing to utilize them. There's not a game developer alive, Human, who hasn't looked at the GDD, started making it and going, what have I gotten myself into? Trust me, we've all been there. We've all been there. Unfortunately, it is necessary. It really is. Let's see. I think we're good. Yeah, exactly, Touch. Yep. Okay, and your GDD is a 30-page notepad, Silver. Boom, that is a GDD. Congratulations, Silver Shion. You made a GDD. High five. How detailed is too detailed? Thank you, Sir Legna, for asking that question. You can never have too much detail. You can never have too much detail, but if your detail confuses your teammates, then you may want to learn to use more concise language. Because there's a difference between detail and unnecessary verboseness. Unnecessary verboseness is Steel rambling off the cuff like he is right now, because that's how he streams. I could probably be a lot more concise. The necessity of detail is this PowerPoint presentation for me to properly teach you. Wazah. All right. Oh, and hey, Nerd Mansion, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. All right, here we go. Okay, yeah, the categories are finished. It's a lot. You need it though. You need it. I apologize. Don't apologize if this intimidates you. Like, I don't want to intimidate you, but at the same time, I'm not going to hold this back. You need to know this. So we're going to move into what's next after I drink a little more water. Because allergies in the South can, well, go suck an egg. Blech. Okay, here we go. All right, now we're going to go over all the crap we just did. And I'm going to go more into detail. These slides, as well as a list, will be in the description, hopefully, of this VOD. I sent them to Touch. I sent you this stuff earlier. Should be 2 PDFs on Megaz. Please make sure that these slides and the list are available, because this is way too much for people to watch and pause and watch and pause. Okay, here we go. I don't know, Sir Legna, I think you confuse, I confuse myself, so I think you're in the same boat as me. All right, so the detail page, here we go. This is mostly for investors and teams. It's like your cover page for an essay. You kind of have to have it. It's quick and easy, so just put it on there. Have like your game name, your name, or your company's name. So we would have, Blue Ghost by Studio Blue. Have your name, or your handle if you don't want anybody to know your real name, like Estelle. The writer's name. That would be the person who wrote the GDD. You don't have to be the one to write the GDD if you have a team and you can pay someone. You can actually give someone all your loose notes and have them write it. So there's a piece of information for you. But otherwise, it's the same person. And then any important licenses. So if you're going to be licensing something like a code base or a particular thing for the game engine, or specifically if you're going to, if this is copyrighted, like if you've copyrighted your game, this is where you would put your copyright or trademark notice. Here we go. Okay, cool. Thank you, Touch. Yeah, please make sure they're loaded. All right, so let's move on to the overview. Now we're going to get a little bit more meaty, guys, and it's just going to get meatier and meatier and meatier. So my apologies for all you game dev vegans out there. You want to start with your high concept, okay? You want to start with the high concept. The high concept is 5 sentences or less of your game. So if your game is an RPG Maker game about a prince going to save his kingdom, give the highest possible concept. This is not you summarizing the action. That's right below that. This is, orphaned prince finds himself on an island with people who don't speak his language. He must befriend them, learn their language through accomplishing tasks till he eventually can communicate with them. Once he has done that, he must get them to follow him on his journey to reclaim his kingdom. That's a high concept. Meat. The summary then is up to 5 paragraphs, so it's everything I just said except a little bit more detail. You're still not going to go act by act, scene by scene. That comes later. It's okay to work in reverse and have your big doable summary and then slink that down into your high concept. That's okay. But don't try to go act by act, chapter by chapter in your summary. It's just a 5-paragraph summary. So in the one I just gave you, the first one would be about him waking up. The second one would be about him exploring the island and learning that he can't speak the language. The third would be about him learning the language, etc., etc. A good way to do this is actually take each sentence of your high concept and expand that into a paragraph. So you can kind of use that as a cheat. That's what I use. Yes, Carlos, absolutely. Welcome to the stream, Carlos. Yeah, if licenses, you would put you'd put paid plugins there. You can also put that on your asset list, but anything that you are licensing, you probably want to put on your title page, and it has to be the most important ones, like for example, copyrights and trademarks, that kind of thing. So it's a touch and go. There's no cardinal rule on that one. Okay, genre and target audience. This is the genre of your game and its target audience. You should know this because you've done market research. Again, even if this is a small RPG Maker project and your target audience is just the RPG Maker community, you need to know that. You need to have gone through the motions of learning that, and you need to be able to express that. That's where genre and target audience is. Obviously, for you all, most of it's going to be an RPG because most people use RPG makers to make RPGs, and that's fine. The game flow, this is the gameplay loop. This is the core gameplay loop. So this would be like, for my prince on the island, it would be like going around to people, talking to them, doing a quest, working with them. The language box, like the albed, slowly starts to fill out from their language to your language. So you want to give a summary of the gameplay loop. The look and feel. What does the game look like? What does it feel like? Is it just a pixelated or a JRPG made with the default assets? Are you using those custom assets so that it looks and feels more, more curved? Are there a lot of circles that you're using for your visual theme? Are you going very heavily into the blues and indigos? That kind of stuff. So, you want to dive into the visual theme aspect. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, by the way, Studio Blue has taught in our creator classrooms. I don't know if that link's able to be shared, but this kind of ties in together all of the stuff that you know as a dev. External influences. That's what was your game influenced by? It's okay to say this here. Don't feel embarrassed. If your game was influenced by Final Fantasy VII, you want to put that down, and you want to put down why. So that if anyone else looks at this and they're helping, they'll know, oh, okay, this is like Final Fantasy VII, except with, furries and balloon animals. Boom, got it. Monetization. Are you going to make money from the game, and if so, how? Is it just going to be sales? Will there be DLC? Will there be season passes? Please avoid predatory microtransactions. Those are terrible. How are you making money from your game? Check up here. You're very welcome, Carlos. Hope I can help you. Nerd Mansion says, if my game becomes successful, I want to start doing merchandise for my game, but my game has RTP resources. How do I go about the merchandise? That's a good question. I think someone from Komodo needs to answer that, because I'm assuming that you own access to the RTP if you make a game. You know what? I can't answer that. There you go. Thank you, Touch. Thank you for saving me from my own foot. Oh, you should. Falcon. JRPGs are the greatest thing in the world. They're my absolute favorite genre, followed right after by survival horror. It's even better when it's in VR. Okay, the stories. All right, here we go. And all this has to be detailed and coherent, guys. You don't get to have a steel ramble or badly worded sentences. You gotta have it be detailed and coherent. So that not only will you be able to follow back on your story later, but if anyone helps you, they will be able to. Because there is nothing worse than having your story misunderstood because you didn't write it properly. Okay, so this is where you start writing all that happy stuff, right? Oopsie. This is where this stuff right here gets big. Okay. Write your backstory. This is everything that has gone on before. All of it. Everything that has happened before. That is relevant to the story. You don't have to start with the creation of your universe unless that's part of the story. Quick side reminder, Studio Blue teaches us all the time. You need to know the aspects of your story even if the player never sees it. So if the way the gods and goddesses formed your world is important, then you need to write that in your backstory, because it will influence how the game comes out. So keep that in your mind. You need to put down everything because it'll influence your design decisions even if the player never sees it. Okay, I apologize if you hear anything moving. I think that is my wife arriving in her car, and that was the garage door. So I apologize if you heard anything in the background. Okay. So after you write the backstory, that's everything that's come on before that sets the stage for your game. Then you need to write the main story. The main story is the main action of the game. That is from the moment the player starts the game till the post-credit scene, if any. You want to use that main story to tell all that stuff you talked about in your summary up here in detail. So this is where you would go line by line, chapter by chapter, moment by moment. This is where you would go into great detail about the things that happen with your main character as the story goes on. But this is the main action. If you're going to reference some kind of a side story, like maybe a side plot that involves potential romances, a side plot that involves restoration of a kingdom that is not required to end the game, then you would put references in the main story section to your side stories. After you do the main story section, go through those side stories. And if they work in parallel to the main story, write down how they do. So if the romance storyline, the main character can romance up to 5 people, and each one of them has their own different romance storyline, but they work in parallel to the main story, then go ahead and write that down. Put that down on paper. Let everyone see on your team or yourself see how those stories, those side stories, work in parallel to the main story. And you go as detailed as you can so that there's no confusion. Also, it gives you a chance to check back later if you shelve this game for a long time and you don't lose your place. Story progression. Very important. How is the story progression measured? Is it measured by just going from map to map to map? Is it measured by, completing certain objectives? Like, let's say, Persona 5 is a great example. Persona 5 is measured by the passage of time, real time. You get 1 or 2 tasks a day, and you get to go to a dungeon if you have an afternoon open, but the clock progresses, and whether or not you've done things is irrelevant. The game moves on, time moves forward, it doesn't stop. And the same would be for, if your game is like that. So, or is your game very much the world stops until the player moves to the next map? Is there a timer? That kind of thing. So all the progression of the story, whether it be timed, by action, by player decision, by going to bed. How does that happen? That's story progression. Okay. Now we're moving on to settings. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, please throw them out. I am monitoring chat. Oh, hey, Jay. Jay says, this is exactly the video I need. Yes, please do. Please do, Jay. Please do. Please do. Between this one and the one that we did in our creator classroom, we hammer this sucker home. Get it. Punch it. So yeah, hopefully this helps you, Jay. Hey, it's good to see you, KV. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, measured by the amount of stars in Mario 64. 100% Wrath. Exactly. That's story completion. Progression. Good job. Okay, so your settings. This is your settings overview. This is where you're going to go over the setting of the game. Does the setting of the game take place in a room? Does it take place in a kingdom? Does it take place on a planet? Does it take place in a galaxy? Where does it take place? You want to go into detail about the setting itself. Let anyone who's reading it know. You don't want to go with one paragraph. This story takes place inside a galaxy. You want to go a little bit more into that. Like, this story takes place inside a galaxy where there are 7 dominant races fighting for control over thousands of star systems. Most of the star systems are linked together by ancient devices that push spaceships forward at extremely high speeds, and I think I'm describing Mass Effect. So, that kind of stuff. So go into that setting, and then go into the game world. That includes world building. So think of the setting overview as a good paragraph or 2, at the most, that gives you an idea of where the world takes place, the game takes place, and then the game world is all your world building. And you should be using world building. And if you're using a program like Campfire or World Anvil, link to articles here. If you've already done a ton of writing, you don't have to copy and paste 1,000 pages if you have an article that you can link to. Just remember that. The look and feel of the world. What does the world look and feel like? If I was going to write the look and feel for Final Fantasy VII Remake, with its very much, steampunk, industrial, electrical, modernized feeling, that's going to be a very different description than Genshin Impact. Or, a space game like StarCraft. Each one of those is going to have a very, very different look and feel, and you need to describe it. You need to get that down so that people will know what your game is going to look like, so that you'll know, if you come back years later, what your game looks like. Because if you've created a world, and it's this really awesome high fantasy world, and you shelve the project, and 5 years later, you're a huge steampunk fan, you may have that bias leak in, so it's better to just have a reference. And then the same thing, visual and oral styles. What's the theme? What visual style have you chosen? What visual theme have you chosen? What oral theme? Are you going only with orchestrated music? Are you going with, things that's, dubstep? What does your game look and sound like? And then lastly, what are the cinematics? What type of cinematics are going to be within the game? Are they going to be full motion video? Are they going to take place within the game engine itself? Are you going to be using a grain filter or a sepia filter? All of that. Put this down in the settings. Let me catch up real quick. Good to see you, Hornet. Well, hello, Hornet. Welcome to the stream. GDDs are also good when you take a long break from one project, like mapping. Yes, absolutely, Hornet, 100%. And hey, Driftwood. Good to see you, Drifty. Yeah, what does GDD stand for? Welcome, Drifty. It's good to see you, man. Hope all's well. All right, here we go. Okay, now we're going to go into the details of the characters. Whew. I hope you like writing, guys. It's going to keep on happening. All right, so the little note at the bottom is super important. So each one of the things we're about to mention should have a backstory. Again, this is stuff the player need not ever see. Your backstory for your characters will help explain their motivations and why they do certain things. So you, the developer, look and see, what are the backstories of these characters so that they can help you write the scenes later on. The player never needs to know them. What's their personality? What is their appearance? What do they look like? Their story connection. What stories are they connected to and how? What are their relationships with other people? Is the main antagonist the protagonist's father? I can't do a good Darth Vader. What are the abilities of the people? What location? Where are they at? What's their schedule? What do they usually do if it's an open world style game? I need to slow down because there's so much information. But there's so much you want to pack into because you want these characters to be alive. You want them to feel like actual characters and not just the sprites you popped down onto a map. You want them to have a life of their own so that in each cutscene that they're in, when they're talking about the cutscenes and they're doing, the info, whether it be a cinematic, whether it be a show, not tell, even if it's exposition, it doesn't matter. Your characters have to have all this information written into them so that you can write a powerful scene that, pardon me, gives them a three-dimensionality to them. And you want to do this for your main characters. They're the ones you want to give a ton of info, a ton of love to. Same thing with the supporting characters. Don't give them any less because they're not the mains. The antagonists, it's super important that you have 3D antagonists. Those antagonists need to feel just as alive and just as, fully fleshed out as your main. Because an antagonist is just the opposing force to the protagonist. And more than likely is doing the right thing in their mind. And even your background characters need to give some love. Your citizens of Whiterun, they need to have something. What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to remain somewhat neutral during the Civil War in Skyrim. They don't want to choose a side, Imperials over Stormcloaks. But they, along with their Jarl Balgruuf, are being forced. So that's all information that goes into the writing of their dialogue, their actions, and how they react to certain things. Pardon me. Let me catch up a little bit. Hello, Devin. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you. Good to see you. Silver, Campfire, and World Anvil are really good. We use World Anvil, but Campfire is just as good. There really is no better. It just depends on what your flavor is. And hey, Viatori, good to see you. I know, right? It's good to see you though, man. Good to see you. We have new videos every day this week. Yeah, okay, cool. Catching up. All right. Okay, now we go into the gameplay details. So this is building off of that game flow, which is your gameplay loop. Now you're going to go deeper into how the gameplay loop is applied to each section of your game. Starting with, of course, the game progression. As the player goes through the games, talking about our prince on the island, as they go through his first waking up and his disorientation, then his initial exploration, then him assimilating himself into the culture, and then him finally breaking out to go save his kingdom. Those are progressions. How does that progress? Do you slowly reveal mechanics? And how and when do you slowly reveal the mechanics? As much as I like to rag on Final Fantasy XIII for its extremely linear first half of the game, it does a really good job of teaching you how to play. Painfully good. Teaching you how to play every step of the way. So break it into sections. For each sections of the game, how does the gameplay loop work? And how does the gameplay loop keep them engaged? And what are you teaching them? Teach, enforce, test. A cardinal rule of game development. Teach them a mechanic, enforce the mechanic, test the mechanic. And that's what game progression is. Objectives per section. For each section of the game, what objectives does the player have to accomplish in order to continue? It could be as simple as Mario hitting that flag at the fortress at the end, or killing Bowser, not Bowser, to rescue not Princess Toadstool. That's an objective. An objective can be more nebulous, like collecting a certain number of stars. Again, we're going back to Mario. It could be something quantifiable, but in no particular order, like, for example, getting Triforce pieces. And I'm on a nostalgia kick, apparently. But each of those objectives have to be what they are and how they're cleared in order to advance the story, linear or non-linear. The mission structure. A mission is a quest. It's how the player accomplishes the objective. So a mission could be anything as little as you're on this planet, there are 12 stars, you need to get these 12 stars in order to get off this planet. The mission structure would be like, this area here has a hill that the character has to climb. This area here is a sewer in which they have to click switches. So for each of those missions, what do they have to do to solve them? And then the puzzle structure goes a little deeper into any puzzles that the missions talk about. So a puzzle structure would be, for example, the switch puzzles on the first world work like this. And then we use that information later on when we're talking about the switch puzzles on the second world. So this is why it's a living document. You can go ahead and put down your objectives per section, then put down the mission structure for each of those objectives under that header. You can just slide it in. These don't have to be different sections if you don't want to, if you feel that you're more organized. And then you can kind of move things around as you are writing this document to where it's comfortable for you to read. Don't feel like you're locked into A, then B, then C. Maybe it's easier for you to go A, subset A, B, subset B, subset B, that kind of thing. You gotta find your own way of being comfortable. So this is a good time to teach you that with objectives, mission structure, and puzzle structure. Because you don't have to go 1, 2, 3. You can go 1, then add the missions and add the puzzles. Then 2, add the missions, add the puzzles, add more puzzles, etc. And then finally, balancing. How is your game going to be balanced? In a JRPG, that is very important. In any RPG, balancing is super important. I highly recommend you get used to spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are your friend. You can link to them in your GDD. Take a moment to catch up with Chad and drink a little something. Oh. It's okay, Kuda dude. We all have those feelings about Final Fantasy 13. I love the characters in the world, though. Okay. Let's see. Raphael, welcome to the stream, Raphael. Good to see you. So far, the presentation's top notch. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We do best we can. Articles on that matter. You're doing super here. Awesome. Well, hello, Brazil. Welcome from hot Houston, Texas, where it's boiling, even though it's winter. I hope we help you out here. Hope we're able to give you something. All right. All right. The mechanics. This is where we're going to start going over the mechanics. The difference between gameplay and mechanics is this is what the player has to do to advance the game, and this is how they do it. So this is where, for all you RPG Maker developers, this is where you talk about what buttons they click in order to do things, whether or not you have to remap the keyboard, the whole 9 yards. That's a part of this. That is a part of this. The maths will haunt you. It's true, Hornet, no matter where you go. You can't escape math. You really can't. It's an inevitability, like death and taxes. All right, so physics and controls. So if your keyboard uses just the standard WADS format or the arrow format with Z being confirmed and X being back out, that's in usual RPG Maker, MV and MZ. Put it down here. If you can remap the controls, put it down here. Let us know. If there's any physics in the game, also let us know. Is this a 2D side-scroller with RPG Maker that uses gravity? This is stuff, you'd put it down here. And if you have a plugin that you're using, this would be a good time to link to the plugin as a reminder you're using this plugin. Navigation of the world. How does the player navigate? Is it as simple as walking around the map? Are there airships? Is there a fast travel system? A game that has a overworld map reminiscent of the old Final Fantasies navigation and movement throughout your story is going to be fundamentally different than if it's the kind where you just choose your area, like on an overworld map, like in Shadow Hearts or other games. You know, you just say, hey, I'm going to go to the forest. I'm going to go to the castle. That's a fundamentally different way of doing things. So you want to put down the navigation in here. Interactivity. Okay, RPG Maker devs, interactivity. Here's where you decide how interactable your world is going to be. Do you break pots when you click on them? Do you check pots for rupees when you click on them? Do you check bookcases for potions? Do you check bookcases for books? What's interactable? What can the player go up to and press enter or Z or spacebar and something happens? This is where you write this down and then you stick to it. Just remember, be consistent. Combat and challenge resolution. Even if you're using the default MZ/MV battle engine, write that down here. If you're making no changes to the battle engine whatsoever, just put that down. This uses the standard default side scroller engine in RPG Maker MV with no changes. Grin. If you make any changes at all, if you're using an ATB, a CTB, a totally modified system, if you're using the Octopath, the OTB system, anything, you put it here. Link to the plugins if you need to, but at the same time, you know, what's more important is the information. So that, you know, whatever that neat, awesome battle mechanic that you're going to wow the RPG Maker community with needs to be detailed in this section. And you be as detailed as you can get. If you can provide screenshots of how the battle system is going to work, because, again, this is a living document, and it's okay to come back and visit this. You should be coming back and visiting this constantly through your game's development cycle. Then please take your screenshots after you've developed your battle engine and put it in here so that you can come and reference later if you have to shelve the project, if you have to come back after a hiatus, or even better yet, if someone else joins you. And then the in-game economy. Is there an in-game economy? Is it just gold? Okay, that's fine. How does it work? Do they just get gold from monster drops and buy it? Do they get gold from quests? Do they get gold passively from farming or investments? You know, can you do like you do in Fable 3 where you buy property and you're suddenly rich after 3 hours of playing? How does that work? Write down your in-game economy and, if possible, link to a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet or whatnot with the balancing of it. Because, as we've all seen, in-game economies are hard. Economy's not easy. So write all it down, provide the maths. Let me catch up real quick. Critique Spremo, welcome to the stream. No interactivity. Oh, good God. All right, Sir Legna. Yeah, mock it up on paper. Yes, absolutely. If you don't want to create it like from like the first time you do it. Okay, let me start over. Boop. For the battle system and anything else, you can make a cheesy mock-up either on paper and take a photo, or in MS Paint, or whatever. And then you put that into your GDD. And then when you actually develop the engine, the battle system, and you have an actual screenshot of it, you can put that in. And then when you have the final version, your gold version of your battle system, you can put that in. And that will help you for two reasons. One, you have a record of it, but two, you're seeing how your idea evolved, because ideas evolve. If you put yourself in a huge restrictive box, your game is going to suffer. So it's okay if from the time you make that janky MS Paint to the final flushed, beautiful version, it's okay if it's changed. The GDD is a living document. It's going to change. You're going to edit. You're going to revise. You're going to delete sections and rewrite them. And you're going to do the same thing with screenshots. You know, but this is how you track it. This is your documentation. Okay, moving on. Hold on, let me drink a little bit more water here. Okay. The game options. Okay, so these are your options in the game. Main menu. What are your main menu options? Is it just new game, continue, options, credits? Do you not have an exit game on your main menu? I say. Graphics and audio settings. Are you stuck on 720p? Can you change it from 640 to 720 to 1080? Do you get dynamic resolution? You know, do the graphics automatically scale up? Good to know. Audio settings. Is it just BGM and sound effects? Or is it just, BGM, SE, ME, and whatever the other one is that I can't remember, and then a master volume? What are your audio settings? For those of you who are making RPG Maker games, this may be important too, because here you can also put that if you have voice acting, it's tied to SE. So maybe SE can't go below a certain amount without ruining the voice acting. Things to remember. What are your in-game options? This isn't your main menu. That's going to come a little bit later under user interface, but what are the in-game options? Is it, item, equipment, skills, options, quit game, save? What are they? Did you remove the save option from the in-game menu because you're going to use a save point? Again, that's a stylistic choice. Some people don't like that. Some people do. You can either, some games you can save everywhere. Some games you can only save at save points. Some games you can save anywhere outside of a dungeon. You as the game developer get to decide that. There's no right or wrong way, but you need to put down in the options menu in-game what are the things the player can do. Same thing with a pause menu. When the player pauses the game, what happens? Is it just unpause? Does it allow them to save, quit? Does it allow them to have a quick menu? A game that we looked at recently, a game that we looked at a while ago, Moons of True Magic by Filthy Peasants actually has a quick menu that acts as sort of a pause. So you'd put that down there. What is your quick menu? What is your pause menu? And when can what change? When do these things change? Do you have, like in your main menu, there's no quest icon until you get your first quest, and then boom, the quest submenu appears. If you have a cooking system, is cooking there from the moment you load up the game, or is cooking only available when they access and activate the cooking system, or crafting system, or whatever? There you go. These are all important things. Save never get good. Oh, good God. There are GDD templates available, Falcon. All you got to do is, easiest thing is to Google. Just Google GDD template or game design document template. I have a few that I've personally used throughout the years. But they're ones that I've just gotten off the internet. So, yeah, I would do that. But the PDF list of this also can kind of be used as a template. I feel like a little caught with my pants down here. If I can find one touch that I really like, I'll send it to you and you can link it in the VOD. Yeah, exactly, Charlegna. Can they pause the game at all? All right. Saving and loading, very important. Gotta save, gotta load. Hopefully, unless it's you play through once and you're Iron Man the whole game. Get good. How does loading from the main menu work? Do they just choose the save file and it loads? Do they choose the save file load and then have some options that go along with it, like load, load from save point, load from start of dungeon, load from town? These are options you can give your players. Saving or loading within the game. Does that work? How does that work? Can they load at any time? AKA save scum. That's an option you got to think about. Because if a person can save scum, maybe that's not what you want them to do as a developer. Again, you decide as a developer what you do and do not want with your game, and then you put down in here what mechanics you allow and don't allow, and that includes loading at any time. Pardon me. Auto saving and quick saving, also very important. RPG Maker MZ auto saves by default. Do you have that option on? If so, when does auto saving work? Quick saving, can they just press a button and drop a save? Also something to consider. If you're designing an open world game, a quick save is kind of necessary, especially for people who want to exploit. Save management. How many save files do they have? Do they have 3? Do they have 10? Do they have 1,000? How many saves can they have? Or is each time they save, it just creates a new save file? Like, again, gonna go to my favorite game, Skyrim. Skyrim, you can have a bazillion save files. You're just gonna have a bazillion save files on your hard drive. Important things to know. Is there a cloud backup? If you're making a Steam game, you're automatically going to have some level of cloud backup if you turn that on, but is it something that is there actual save redundancy there? These are things you need to research and decide, do you want to do or not? Gonna move on, let's see. Silver Shion says, my battle system is basically 2 pages, one for what the player can do and one for what the enemy can do. There you go, see? And what I like about what Silver Shion is saying here, and this is another teaching point about there is no one right way, is as you're making the GDD, you may come into questions. Well, is this what Steele was talking about? Was Steele meaning this? Should we do this? You got to do what's right for you. What I'm teaching you is a theory and a framework. And then you take this and you apply what you're comfortable with into the creation of your GDD. Remember, if you're making a small game, the GDD is not going to have tons and tons of parts to it. It's going to be, the same basic framework, but it's going to be a lot less. If you're making the next Final Fantasy VII, I'm sorry, man, you're going to have hundreds of pages. All right, let's move on here. I try not to save scum. I actually turned quick saving off on Skyrim VR Touch because I found that I was save scumming and it broke my immersion in half. So I actually only can drop full saves in Skyrim VR. It's the only way I play now. All right, any mobile game requires autosaves, absolutely. Yep, you guys are getting it. You guys are getting it. Chat, you all are on target tonight. Let's move on. Okay, the replay value. What is the replay value of the game? What replaying do you have? What makes the game replayable? So this is both a philosophical question and a question for your GDD. Can the game be replayed? If so, what makes it replayable? Is it, as Silver Shion just said, is it multiple endings? Is it that there's always the same ending, but the paths are very varied? Does it end up in a world state that you save, either through loading up old save files or some sort of online repository like the Dragon Age Tapestry, that allows you to play the sequel or subsequent sequels with the world at a certain state based off of player choices? And speaking of which, what are the player choices and the outcome? This is where you want to really detail it. So you talked about it in your story progression, you talked about it in your main story, but now you really want to go into that. What happens if you choose certain paths, certain decisions? What happens if you choose to help the elves as opposed to the dwarves? What happens if you choose to give the artifact to the Dark Lord as opposed to the Holy One? What happens? What's the outcome? And then multiple paths. See how it all kind of feeds into itself? You don't have to have one section strict and then another section. They kind of go into each other. So you could have your player choice section go into a subsection on multiple paths. So here's the artifact. You give it to the Dark Lord or the Holy One. Here's the path for the Dark Lord. Here's the path for the Holy One. A lot of times in games they're called routes. Excuse me, I gotta drink something. So, these are your paths. These are your routes that bring the player through the story. Multiple endings. I think we have a bot. Multiple endings. What are those endings? What goes into feeding them? So you have ending A, ending B, ending C, ending D. Are they the result of multiple things that are decided throughout the game? Or is there just one critical choice at the end that gives you, one of the four endings? Saints Row Gat Out of Hell made fun of that by you literally choosing the ending at the end of the game. While other games like Nier Automata have an inane set of endings. I think there's 26, one for each level of the alphabet, based off decisions you make and things you do and fish you do and don't eat. In fact, I think with Nier Automata, one of the endings is literally, do you fight as one character or the other? But these are all important things. You got to detail all of this. So that way you'll know, you can keep track of all of this. Especially if you're going to do your massive epic, guys. This is so important. And then finally, a new game plus. Is there a new game plus? Can you load up a game, starting the story over with your character at the same level and same equipment? And if so, what carries over? What doesn't carry over? Catch up real quick. Recommended how to link between multiple sections. That's why if you have something that you're using that links, creates in-document links easily, like Artisy Draft, I think Scrivener does that too. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone, because I haven't used Scrivener in legit forever. Otherwise, you could just you could put in, I think, a section navigation on Word. It depends on what you're using, Solegna. That's very dependent on the application. Okay, let me drink some more. I'm literally going to put my voice in a cast when this is over with. Okay, here we go. My favorite ending, Automata self-destructing a space station or eating the mackerel. Yes, me too. You blow up at the space station, the commander hates you. Or eating the mackerel, which is like the greatest way to die ever. I love that game so much. Okay, here's cheats. So there are 3 sections here. 2 require you to just write it out, and 1 requires a little bit of forethought and also recording later on when somebody posts a YouTube video of your game. Developer cheats. These are cheats you put in there to make the game easier. This could be as simple as just, I use the debug menu and nothing else. Or you could have, talk to the red potion in the blue room at the start of the game to get all the items. Hopefully you disable that. Intentional cheats are things that you want the player to discover over the course of the game that give them an edge, and it's intentional, and if they figure it out, good, it's a feature. Write them down here. Possible exploits. These are you attempting to forecast possible things that could be done to exploit your game and make the player god tier without them trying. Do your best to try to figure things out, try to work through it, do your best problem solving. But more often than not, what's going to happen is this section is going to be turned into reported exploits that you're going to learn about when someone posts a YouTube video of them doing an exploit on your game. This includes things that need to be patched, like if somebody figures out a way to get infinite gold in your game, to things that you probably don't want to patch because it's kind of neat, like if a speedrunner figures out an exploit to get through your game in 5 minutes. That's also cool. One second. My God, 1 minute due to an exploit. So yeah, there you go, right there. Well, but the thing is this though, some games some developers will not patch the bugs that allow speedrunners to do their thing because it's free exposure if a speedrunner plays and breaks your game for speedrunning purposes. That is free. That's free marketing right there. So some developers will not patch the things that speedrunners can use. They'll just patch stuff that allows for infinite lives or infinite gold. All right, Easter eggs. So this one's simple. What are your Easter eggs? If you have any, you don't have to, but they're so cute. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to have an Easter egg of something like Legends of Driftwood or To the Moon in their game? We all want to give the love to what is passed on before us. So put the Easter egg list in there and how to find it. What do they got to do? Do they got to do something really ridiculous, or they just got to go in a room at a certain time of the day? Pop! That's simple. But if you're not going to have Easter eggs, then don't include the section. Just remove it. Tutorial level. So this is important. We've gone over this before. The tutorial level doesn't have to say this is the tutorial level. I mean, you can go all out like the old Spider-Man game did, where Bruce Campbell was eating a sandwich while teaching you how to play Spider-Man. But you don't have to do that. The tutorial level can be something that's intuitive and considered to be part of the game, and all it does is just kind of give you those mechanics as you're playing. That's fine as well. But you want to give a special section to your tutorial level specifically because you want them to learn how to play your game properly. This is the first exposure they have to the game. So give a synopsis of it. In our Prince on the Island, it would be the prince wakes up on the island by the beach. Over the course of X number of minutes, he's going to learn how to move around, how to fight against monsters with a starting weapon, which is a stick, how to make a campfire, and how to navigate via the sun. There you go. That's your synopsis. Introduction. Introduction is how the game actually starts. So you can put, or the level actually starts, because you may make your tutorial level optional. So you can do that, that's fine. So have your introduction. Then have a physical description of it. Describe the level. All levels need a physical description. And if we ever teach the LDD, you're going to learn that can get pretty deep. So this would be something like, the hero wakes up, the prince wakes up on a sandy beach. The sand is white and sparkling with shards, minute shards of volcanic glass from the volcano that is far away. The water is a very deep blue with some occasional coral-colored coral poking through from the reef. Tropical fish of all vibrant colors swim about in the shallows, while off in the distance the movement of humpback whales can be seen, etc., 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 etc. That's physical description. the palm trees nearby are of a vibrant green with a dark brown with succulent coconuts popping off, that kind of stuff. You know, just get your channel your inner writer and just go at it. Then there's the level flow. There you go. There's a level flow. How do they get through? What is the general flow of the level? That and the critical path. If you were here for our mapping tutorial last night, you know that critical path is not a red line they must follow or they fail. The critical path is the generalization of, based on where they are, their orientation, and based on where they go, the destination, what is their navigation through the level. So if you haven't watched the video from last night where Teal and I make just god tier maps, please watch it. Please watch it. It teaches you wayfinding. And level flow is the flow going along the critical path. The prince learns to move first, then he learns how to fight first, then he learns how to craft, then he learns how to navigate. There you go. That's the level flow. And then challenges and solutions. What are the challenges and what are the solutions that your character is going to face? Are they going to find, or the first fight that they get into with the crab when they're beating it with a stick? That's a challenge. A solution is beat it with a stick. Well, maybe he can also hit it with his fire spell, and that automatically cooks it. So if he automatically cooks it with his fire spell, when he has the fire, he can use that fire, that extra heat to, keep himself warm, make some coffee or whatever, because he has a coffee packet in his pocket for whatever reason. Or boil some seawater to have both salt and drinkable water. It doesn't even have to be something that changes the gameplay. It could just change the flavor text, change the description to breathe life into the story. But for every challenge you have on your tutorial level, you want to put how many solutions they have. I like to say that every challenge should have 3 solutions, but that may not always be possible. But you can come up with some massively awesome mechanics in the process. Like, for example, hitting the crab with fire instead of the stick. So instead of just killing it, you kill it and cook it so you can eat it immediately. Let me catch up real quick. All right, let's see. Oh, dude, Sir Lagna is the greatest maps ever made. Greatest. Just amazing. Just, there are no better. Anybody who watched it last night don't know what the hell we're talking about. Coffee warming spell. Okay. And then here's the levels. So this is the same thing. This right here is a more expanded version of that. Tutorial levels are simple because they teach the game. I wouldn't say they're optional. I would say have them there. to some extent. To some extent. But here's your actual detail. So here's each of your levels. So every level in your game, and a level is a map. A level is a place. So for example, a dungeon that consists of 12 maps is one level that happens to have 12 map files. A town that includes the town proper, the keep, the interior of the keep, and the dungeon underneath, and the mage's tower where you get that quest that you need. All of that is a level with multiple map files. So don't go with, don't think that each time you have to make a map, you have to make a section of the GDD for it. It's anytime you make a section of your game. Same thing as before, your synopsis is synopsis of the level. Introduction, what is the introduction? Physical description, that's the same. The objectives, what do they have to do? So unlike in the tutorial level where the objective is relatively simplistic because it's teaching you, this is where you start adding in multiple objectives, and it can be anything from in the dungeon finding switches 1, 2, and 3 to get the red orb to place in the red door, switches 4, 5, and 6 to get the blue orb to the blue door to get to the boss room. Those are all sets of objectives. Objectives can also be in the town. Go to the blacksmith, smith a dagger, hone the dagger, make it sharper. Make a helmet. Tighten the helmet and make it fit better at the workbench. And I just described Whiterun because I love Adrian. All of those are things you can do. Your objectives don't have to be a linear go from point A to point B and kill the monster. It could be go into the castle, speak to the porter, speak to the steward, speak to the king, speak to the princess in the garden. What are you doing? Level flow. Level flow is like it was described here. It's how you get through those objectives, what occurs, as is the critical and optional path. So again, all of this right here, and if I'm going too fast, guys, let me know, because there's just so much and I'm trying not to spend too much time on each thing. All of this here is built off the wayfinding we talked about from before. The objectives are what they have to do, the level flow is how they accomplish it, and the critical and optional paths are the different ways that they can go through wayfinding to get the goals, which is the critical path, or extra stuff, whether it be physical stuff, story stuff, environmental storytelling, beautiful vistas, etc. Those are the optional paths. Important challenges and solutions and trivial challenges and solutions. I separate the two because some challenges you're going to have in the game are huge. They're going to be things like defeating the dragon. Okay, so we got to beat the dragon in the dragon lair level. Okay, so how do we do that? We dodge his attacks and go get the magic sword. That's an important challenge, and the solution is getting the magic sword, then you can face the dragon in final combat. Trivial challenges would be like unlocking a door to get the gold cup. Now, I say that's trivial because it doesn't move the story forward. Just because the GDD calls it trivial doesn't mean it is. So you may want to change trivial and important to minor and major, because the player may find getting that gold cup to be the most important thing in the world. So please do not get hung up on the word choice here. This is just what we put down. So put down the challenges and solutions that are necessary to complete the objectives, that are these, and the ones that are necessary just to get extra goodies. And then the level conclusions. How does a level end? Does the level only end when they exit? Does a level end if they exit with the dragon's head, or if they leave with the dragon's hand in marriage, or if they leave out the front door because nope. Those are all conclusions. Write those down. And you want to do this again for every single level in your game. And once more, level does not mean map file. Level means a piece of your game section, a dungeon, a town, a field, a mountain, etc. All right, let me catch. Let's see. Would references to other media be counted as Easter eggs? Yeah, absolutely. If Viatori Tran, an Easter egg is something that just is cute, that gives a haha or oh, that's cool moment to the player that has nothing to do with the game at all. So yeah, if you, for example, an Easter egg would be if the villain is talking to the hero and says, "I am your father," that is an Easter egg. That is a callback to Empire Strikes Back. So yeah. And so Legna, what do you mean by critical and optional question mark? I know you know what critical and optional means, so we're gonna move on. I'm doing okay, Zamu. Thanks for asking. My allergies are kicking my butt right now. H-Town just cannot decide what weather it wants to be, and whenever the weather abruptly changes from hot to cold or cold to hot, my allergies just go through the roof insane. I took some Claritin earlier, but it is what it is. I'm gonna have a scratchy throat for the rest of the day. But thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about our user interfaces. All right, user interfaces are what the player sees, the user, so user/player, in order to play the game. They have to see things, they have to touch things, they have to be able to move the character to experience your game. Even if the game only relies on vocal commands and all you can do is talk to the on-screen character, which I know there's a game, I just don't remember what it is, where you don't control anything, you just say things to the character. But that's a user interface, that's a vocal interface. All right, so the user interface are the control systems. We're talking specifically about not just the in-character controls, but like the keyboard, but also the mouse, voice commands, etc., ways to get the character through the levels and accomplishing the objectives. Cameras. Are you just using the default RPG Maker camera that is at, that certain height? Are you zooming in at all? Are you zooming out at all? If so, put down. The camera will zoom in for cinemas. Camera will zoom out for important moments. And that's it. That's all you have to put. You don't have to put when the camera pans for a cinematic. That's considered different. Just put down. I'm using the default RPG Maker camera, but I'm going to zoom and pan as is necessary to draw attention to parts of the game. There, I just wrote everyone's section. My goodness. Okay, let's see. No, I'm not getting sick, guys. I swear to goodness, it is just freaking allergies. Oh, critical and optional challenges. Oh, yeah, it's critical and optional challenges. You can call them that instead of important or trivial. That's good. That's fine. Yeah, I hope we all get better, man. I hate it when the weather gets like this. The month of February, the last half is always hell for me. But if I go into a coughing fit, I'll just mute the mic. All right, moving on here. Okay. Menu systems. Again, so now you're going to go into depth. Remember how earlier you talked about what were the main menu, in-game menu options? Now you're going to talk about the actual systems. What they look like. What feel they have. Are you using the default RPG Maker menus? Are you using Mog Hunter's menus where you're just going to reskin everything? All of that's okay. You as the developer get to decide what you use, but here's where you document it. Here's where you put down what it is you're using, what it looks like, what it feels like, how it navigates. Yeah, pretty much touch. HUDs and minimaps. Do you have HUDs? Do you have minimaps? HUDs is the heads-up display. That's what the player sees when they're currently controlling the character. So a menu is what they pause into. A HUD is what they see when they're walking around. So in RPG Maker, if your character's walking around and you got the time of day on the upper left-hand screen and a compass on the upper right-hand screen, that's a HUD. Mini-maps are those little maps that are literally just visual representations of where they're at, usually with cute little dots for certain things, and give them kind of an idea of where they are, and they're kind of like following the map, and they're looking just at the mini-map and not at the main action because I get lost all the time. Shouldn't have said that. Mini-maps have plugins in RPG Maker. If you choose to use them, write down here that you're going to use them. Write down which plugin you're going to use and detail what each dot is going to be. What is the blue dot? What are red dots? Is that the good guys and the enemies? What are they? This is where you want to put those details down. Your help system. Okay, there you go. What is your help system? Do they get any? Is it a item on their item menu called help menu, and they go in there and it gives them help? Is it something that they press a key and the help menu comes up? Did you add it to the in-game menu and it's something they select? Which, by the way, guys, if you're using RPG Maker and you have the ability to put help in the menu as something they can navigate to in the in-game menu, I really recommend that. It looks a lot more professional, just no insults intended, guys, than going into your item menu and saying help book. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But if you have the ability to make a menu item, it just looks so much better. And then UI visuals and audio. What does your UI look like? Is your UI just basically Final Fantasies? Or is your UI, something more watery? Does it use a lot of water as its theme? Is your UI very steampunky like we did for our Rosenhearts demo? What is the UI? What does it look like? And the audio, what does it sound like? If they click on something, does it just go clink, or does it sound like a bell ringing? If they confirm something like using an item, does it make the traditional sound that RPG Maker does, or is it ding, items done? What is it? You get to write all that down here. Let me go ahead and catch up here. Luna Engine for HUDs and menus. Yes, Luna Engine is also good, Carlos. Very good choice there. Very good. It's the help book. You hush. Sir Legna. All right, moving on. The game engine. Put this down for your sanity and put this down for your team's sanity, because there's all multiple versions. Please do not upgrade your version of RPG Maker MV or MZ during the course of your project. Whatever RPG Maker version you choose when you start your project, please stick with it. Otherwise, you're going to potentially break things and potentially start all over. This does not count for the people who don't care if their game never gets done. But if you seriously want to get your game done and you want to get it done as little headache as possible, please, 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 for the love of all the gods, don't change your version of RPG Maker mid-project. I'll say it one more time. Please don't. So put your game engine in the version. So RPG Maker MZ version 1.52. Whatever, that's what you put down right there. Relevant version notes. Hey, you can actually go to the Steam page or the Komodo site and actually copy and paste what the notes are for that version. Please do that. Make it easy. That way you don't have to go to the interwebs in order to look and see what that version says. And then the highest engine upgrade possible. So let's say after all of that, you're like, well, I can go from 1.52 to 1.54. I can do that and nothing else. Then you would put that down here. Again, I don't recommend it. But if you can, okay. You would put it down here. Yes, absolutely, BG. There's a reason AAA delves don't upgrade mid-dev. You just don't. You just don't do it. You just don't do it. Here's a little hint, guys. When you're talking about engine versions, and this is pretty much industry standard, the number to the left of the decimal point, like the 1, the 2, that is the version of the engine. So Unreal Engine version 4 as opposed to Unreal Engine version 5. The next point over from the decimal, so like 4.1. That's major versions. Major version upgrades is major feature changes. The crap after that is your minor changes. So that is why, for example, Unreal Engine version 4.25 or 4.2.5, depending on how you do it, going from that to 4.2.6 is not that big of a deal. It could still break your game, so do your research first. But going from 4.2.5 to 4.3.1 is probably not going to work. So that's a little cheat code. Yeah, let me catch up a little bit here. All right, so let's see. RPG Maker updates never break anything. Hush, KV. Yeah, don't play with plugins halfway through the project. That's another good thing. Thank you, Silver. Yes. I don't know if I actually put a thing for plugins. Yeah, plugins would technically go here. So I'll go over what Silver said in a second. Here we go. Game programming. So this is where you guys are going to talk about your plugging and your scripting. Okay, hold on. So Legna put down major.minor.bug. Thank you. Yeah, major.minor.bugfix. That's a good joke. That's actually true, but it is built off of humor. Okay. Game programming. This is all your scripting, coding, and plugins. So what programming language are you using? Obviously, if it's RPG Maker, you're using JSON, JavaScript. That's what you're using. You're using that language. Put it down here. If you happen to know what version you're using, put that down. I'm pretty sure you can get that information off of the MZ site. So just put that down. If you are a programmer, by the way, you don't need to be a programmer to use RPG Maker. You really don't. But if you're using RPG Maker and you want to get into programming and programming terrifies you, the JSON version that is used in RPG Maker, MV, and MZ is a really good way to jump into programming. It is super easy to learn. So, yeah. Oh, agreed, Sir Legna. Okay. In-house plugins and scripts and third-party plugins and scripts. So here's the difference between the two. In-house plugins and scripts are the ones you write. Third-party plugins and scripts are what other people write. Third-party plugins that you have modified with permission, hopefully, are still third-party plugins and scripts. So if you're taking one of Yanfly's scripts and either modifying it or making your own plugin that changes it, put it under third plugins and scripts. You shouldn't be changing people's scripts without their permission, of course. So let's say you're using Yanfly's, let's say you're using their battle engine upgrade, the one that makes the default battle engine interesting, the STB. And you would list that under third-party plugins and scripts. And then if you modify it with your own plugin that changes certain attributes, you would put that down there as well. You'd make a bullet point for Yanfly's STB plugin, version number, etc. And then you would put as a lower bullet point underneath it, modified this class here and this class here to do this effect. Because remember, you don't want to confuse yourself and other people. If you tell people, "Oh, I'm using a modified version of Yanfly's STB," and you don't tell them what those modifications are, and you can't tell them on a class level, you're probably going to confuse them. Luna Engine is third plugin. Yeah, I believe so, Zemu. Yeah, Luna Engine's third party. Yeah. If you did not develop it, it's third party. If you wrote it yourself and it doesn't modify something that already exists, it's in-house plugin. Thank you, BG. All right. And then the version list for upgradability and everything. So put down what the versions are for every plugin. You actually technically, where's my mouse? You want to put this stuff right here with these. So what's your version list for upgradability for in-house, and what's the version list for your third parties? Okay. Let me catch up on chat here. Yes, Solegna, yes, major minor bug hot patch, yes. I'm gonna move on, but Rack, you're on point. Okay, so yeah, for Luna, in-house plugins. Why didn't I find a plugin myself? So I wrote it myself. You know, I'm gonna be honest again, BG, and anyone else who's thinking of getting into game making. You have a lot of power if you learn how to script. You don't have to code the entire game. The engine does the powerful lifting for you. And RPG Maker MV and MZ is a very powerful engine. But if you can learn how to do the scripting, and trust me guys, as we went over this in one of our podcasts like 2 or 3 weeks ago, programming is not that scary. It just seems that scary because it's like picking up another language like Spanish or French or whatever your natural language is not. But once you learn the way that classes, methods, and functions work, once you learn how that works, it's just all about the syntax. So if you are thinking, you know what, I want to dip my toes into scripting, which is easier coding, the JSON that is used by RPG Maker is such a good way to learn. That's my end of my lecture on that. Yes, make an extension plugin instead of yes. Again, Solegna, you really should not be modifying a third-party plugin. If you get their permission, technically you can, but you really shouldn't. You should be creating an extension that modifies it, and you just put it below it on the plugin order. So, agree with Solegna 1000%. That is the correct way to do it. One question still: do we not need to update the plugins at all? You want to have your plugins compatible with your version of RPG Maker, 100%. So if you're using RPG Maker MZ, certain version number here, and you're using Yanfly's plugins, certain version there, and you know the two are compatible, don't upgrade them. Leave it. There's a huge reason, I think BG mentioned it earlier, AAA developers do not change the versions of their stuff once they start writing the game, once they start making the game. They leave it as is, because all of these moving parts that make your game, especially when you get to a code level, if something breaks and it breaks the functionality of your game, tracking down exactly what it is and fixing it is a nightmare. It is so much easier not to give yourself that headache. And as Solegna mentioned, if you need to make a fundamental change to a plugin, you can always write an extension. How do we make cool attacks? Well, hello. Good to meet you, sir. Can't pronounce your name. Sorry. How do we make cool attack animations? Use a combination of the animation tab, working knowledge of Elf Kisser, and action sequences. There. I can't give you a full how-to tutorial on that because I'm teaching the GDD. All right, let's move on. Yeah, version control is super important, BG, and anyone else who's listening. If you keep backups, your backups are super important. Be able to roll back. If you don't roll back, you can lose your project. Terrifying. Okay. Moving on to the game AI. We have done creator classrooms and we have done podcasts on AI, so this is more of what they are as opposed to how they do it. But what you want to do in your game AI is you want to go over what those AIs are. What are the methods? Are you just using the troop functions in RPG Maker's database? Is that all you're using? Are you writing in with scripts your own AI to give behavior to other things? Are you just using eventing to move people around the map? Are you using pathfinding to move NPCs around the map. This is stuff you need to consider. And then you need to go into depth as to how those algorithms work for friendly characters. These are ones that are helpful to your party members. They could be other party members. They could be allies, etc. What logic are you using to determine the behavior of friendly characters? Then the neutral characters, like the townspeople who just go about their daily business. What is their behavior? A fantastic example is games like Skyrim, made by Bethesda. They have their problems, but when their AI system works, it works really, really well. You could even learn from them. They have things called factions that are in their database. Every NPC are members of certain factions. Those factions have relationships to other factions. And depending on what factions you and other people are part of, the responses will be different. The reason all the bandit characters in Skyrim always attack the player is because the bandits are all part of a bandit faction that is always hostile to the player who's in the player faction. So again, you can use that kind of logic, or you can go as simple as these neutral AIs, these townspeople walk around in a random pattern except for the guy behind the counter. This person goes up to the fountain, tosses in a coin, then goes over and pets the cat. You can be that simplistic, or you can get as massively complex as you want to. And there are people who spend their entire careers programming AI because it's an amazing thing. And then the hostile AIs in and out of combat. How do they act when they haven't detected the player or engaged the player? How do they act when they have? A AI map enemy in RPG Maker, which like the wolf running around the forest, is going to act a certain way. And then once it's in the battle scene, it's going to act a completely different way. You need to put that down. For hostile AIs in combat, specifically for you RPG Maker devs, you're going to want to write down in this section how they act according to the battle flow. So for example, the troop thing where you have like the different events, the different, at the start of the battle, each time the battle engine ticks, etc., etc. You want to write that down. You want to put down your wolf, which has its 200 HP, does howl when it's between 75 HP and 50 HP, automatically attacks whoever has the lowest agility or whoever is being debuffed by howl. At 25% or lower, has a 5% chance of escaping. These are things you put down in this section right here. So RPG Maker devs, take note. This section's super important to you guys because a lot of the magic in RPG Maker takes place algorithmically in the battle scene. Take a second to catch up. Whew. There's a couple of them, by the way. A couple of RPG Maker Discords. It just depends on which one you want to go to. I don't know if there's actually an official one run by Komodo. I'm hesitant to say that because I don't know for 100% sure. But there's the Studio Blue one. There's Driftwood Gaming. I know there is a RPG Maker server. So yes, there are tons where you can learn RPG Maker, and a very helpful community, by the way, sir. The RM community is one of the most helpful and new member friendly I've ever seen. All right, moving on. Okay. Your game art. All right, so this is where you want to start writing stuff down. Okay, so Komodo doesn't want to. Thank you, Touch. I didn't think so. I just didn't want to stick my foot in my mouth. All right, so you're going to both write and post here. You're going to write before your artists have art, or you have art, and then you're going to paste pictures or links to online image galleries afterwards. Write down your art style. What is your art style? Is it pastels with 2Ds like Paper Mario? Is it cell shaded, that kind of thing? Visual themes. We did a Creator Classroom on that once. So is your visual theme red and comic booky? Like Sin City where it's black and white, but only blood is red. Concept art. Post it here. When you get it, start posting it. Post the most important pieces in the GDD, and then a link to an online gallery for the rest. The environments. Describe the environments, but then post pictures of the environments. Remember, half of this is writing, the other half is posting images. Same thing with the characters. Put your character artwork. So when you get that awesome picture of Victoria and Naomi, post pictures in there. Objects, the different things that you're going to find. You can either post like a sword in the character's hand or just the sword by itself. If you're doing Zelda, you would put like your master sword, your gloves, your bow and arrow, your boomerang, your pots that Link is inevitably going to break. All of that would go in objects. And then miscellaneous, things that don't fit in the other categories. By the way, monsters and enemies go in characters. So all the things that move around and have a life, even if they're undead, go in characters. Miscellaneous would be things like, I don't know, shrubs, flowers, shooting stars. So it's kind of a catch-all. Okay, catching on? All right, cool. Yeah, the RPG beta tester server, that's another good one. Thank you. Yeah. Those are the ones that I would absolutely say you should go to no matter what would be beta tester, Studio Blue, Driftwood Gaming. I would actually recommend Hawk Zombie, even though he's more player than developer. He has a very, very active RPG Maker community as well. And there's probably others, and I apologize if I'm missing them. No insult to anyone. All right, the game audio. Here's where you want to write down your aural theme. Aural is what the game is going to sound like. So again, if you're going full electronica, that's great. If you're going, dubstep, have fun with that. You're going full symphonic. You're going 8-bit chiptune. This is where you write it down, and you can reference here the stuff that you want to. Excuse me. You can reference the stuff you want to relate to. So I'm sorry, I'm having my brain skipped a beat. So if your game is like Eternal Sonata, where it's all symphonic music based off of the works of Chopin, you'd put it right here under aural theme. If it's all, 8-bit chiptune like Undertale, put it there as well. Now the background music, this is where you're going to list all of your tracks and what they are for. This will grow as your game grows. So if your game starts with 3 tracks, because that's all you and your guy and your composer has written, that's fine. When you get down to 300 tracks, write that too. Every single track, write down the name of it. If you can post to an online place to listen to it, that would be fantastic. And what it is and what it's used for. Because you want to keep track of that so you're not reusing the same theme over and over again, or you're not getting the wrong character theme for the wrong character. So you're not using character B's theme for character A when you meant to use character A's theme. So write it down. Environmental audio, what are you using? Again, you have a lot of forests, so write down a lot of lists. We need music for the trees. We need music for feet crunching on the grass. We need music for birds singing. We need music for the stream in the background, with the water. The waterfall far away. You write this down. And then as you get those tracks, just like with background music, you put that information there. If you have your own composer and you want to write down instructions on what stuff should sound like, then you could do that too. So under background music, you could write, hey, I want the battle theme to sound like this. Here's some links to other battle music I have heard of. And then when he composes your battle music, you just link to that SoundCloud file or whatnot. So this is just as important for communicating to your composers, to your environmental audio artists and your sound effects artists. Just like with here, you could actually communicate. Look, I don't have a picture for this character, but here's what I want this character to look like. Here's some links to the character and how the character should look in my mind. Inspiration. Here's my link to characters from Genshin Impact, and I want this character to look like this, except more this and this and this, other parameters. And then you post the picture there when it's drawn. So both of these sections right here, audio and art, can be used to communicate to your artists and your audio engineers to give you exactly what you want. Then, since it's a living document, you change that entry to actually point to the finished product when the finished product is made. Same thing with menu sounds, and same thing with voice acting. If you have voice acting in your game, each character should have a description on how their voice sounds, exactly you as the developer want them to sound, and then when you get your voice actor, you say this character is being played by this voice actor, and if possible, link to their audition files or whatnot. Let me catch up on chat here. Oh boy, my throat is dry. Okay. Would you say it's more scripting or working events making a good game? I would say both. I'm pretty sure they're talking about this already, but scripting and working with events is both important. Neither one's more important than the other. They both accomplish the same thing. It's just what you want to do. This video, like about making a whole game. This video is just about creating the GDD. I'm pretty sure somebody already answered that. So MLGL, this is about making the GDD, which is your documentation for the game. This is part of an ongoing series this entire week, where certain topics are talked about by certain people within the community, different YouTubers and influencers. This is the last one I'm doing for the week. Okay, catching mechanics like fighting. Okay, you guys are talking. Cool. Yes, and as Sir Legna said, you're licensing to the art and the music, okay? If you do not have licensing to the art and the music, if you are buying the license because it's from a art site or a music site, put that licensing information here. Very, 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 very well put, Sir Legna. Promise we're getting near the end, guys. Okay, technical specs. This is where you put down your target hardware. All right. Put down what you suspect the game will be running on. Oh god, no. Touch, I'm going to die if I do any more of it. As it is on Thursday, I have to do a forum, and Friday I have to do an AMA, so I'm going to just not talk on Wednesday at all. Okay. Technical specs. So your hardware is the hardware you are targeting. You are going to want to look at what is required for the RPG Maker engine, look at the load your plugins have on the CPU and RAM, and you want to give your best guesstimate. It is okay if you're not 100% accurate when you start, because it's really difficult to figure that part out. So, you know, if you put the wrong CPU and you put the wrong RAM and you put the wrong video card and you just started writing your GDD, or you just cut and paste from the minimum specs or the recommended specs for RPG Maker MV or MZ, that's okay too. Because living document, this is absolutely going to change. Because right here, the FPS on the test systems, late beta to gold. So when you're in your late beta phase and you're testing it, whether it be on Humans RPG Maker server, RPG Maker test server, highly recommend you go there. That is the server to get people to test your game. And you get into that late beta phase and people are testing your game, you can ask them, hey, what was your FPS? In fact, let your beta testers have the FPS showing in their counter, their upper left-hand corner. There should be a plugin that automatically turns that on. Have that on when people are beta testing your game and ask them, hey, what was the average FPS? Were there any places in your game where the FPS dropped? Then you record it here. Okay, and then based off of that, then you can start changing your targeted hardware because you can start guessing. So if beta tester 1 is constantly getting 60 frames per second, find out what their hardware was. If beta tester 2 is doing great, except when he's in certain areas, it drops to 30 or 20, okay, that's not good. Let's find out what's going on. What's your technical specs? And then if beta tester 3 is always at 15 frames per second, what's their technical specs? Getting all of that, you can now put your target hardware and accurately tell your players what type of hardware they need. And then lastly, what's your external libraries? I mean, obviously for the most part, it's going to be the library, the JSON library that comes with RPG Maker for you all. But let's say you're using some kind of an installer like Firehawk likes to use for his game, Immortal Sins. You know, put that here. Whew. Catch up a bit real quick. Still mime. I might BG. I might mime the form. Let Teal do all the talking. Interpretive dance. That's more Teal. That's more Teal. Yeah, lower specs for wider audience. It's true. It's true. But don't be fooled, Silver. Don't be fooled at all. RPG Maker games can absolutely tank your FPS if they're not optimized properly. So just because it's made in RPG Maker does not mean it's going to run well. You still have to do optimizations. You still have to use good level design and optimal coding. You have to do the things that you have to do to make your game run well. You don't get a free pass just because it's RM, unfortunately. So would you say I should read the entire documentation? It'd be good to make a game. I would start with the video tutorials, but that's me personally. I learn better watching other stuff. I mean, you can read the online documentation for RPG Maker. You could definitely read the online documentation for people like Yanfly. But I would highly recommend watching videos, and if you do well reading some of the tutorials, but then at a certain point in MLGL, open up RPG Maker and just start making something. It doesn't have to be the game you want to make. In fact, I recommend against making the game you want to make at first. Make something small. Make it be that your character goes on a quest to get coffee. You know, that's your game. Make another game where they go on a quest to get coffee and then they meet up with their best friend and they get attacked by a moth. See? Little things like that, baby steps. And the more you get in there and the more complex it is, and the better you get at it. Your first couple of games, your first dozen games should be short things that last 5 to 10 minutes and just push you to learn the engine a little better. And then you can start making the actual game you want to make. Ooh, all right. Design plan. What's your team members? What are their roles? Is it just you? Or is it a whole bunch of other people? You know, are you the lead designer and your best friend is the composer? Well, for Dracula is Dead, which is the game that I was on a team for the Hawktober Game Jam last October, I was the writer. I was the lead writer. I was the writer. And other people were like KV was the lead designer. Nova was one of the lead inventors, as was Moogle Rampage, I believe, as well. Forgive me, guys. It's been a while and I've slept since then. But we had a team, and the team member roles were very clearly defined. The production phases, proof of concept to gold. Now, on a game jam, it's going to be just get it done. Here's some steps to get it done, and we get it done. But a non-game jam game should have proof of concept to gold. Remember the phases of development. Proof of concept is here's just a slight. Proof of concept is here is the bare bones version of the game where Reed or Harold is running around a map just to prove that I can make this system function. Alpha is the entire game from start to finish with features added in each time you pass through the alpha, but lots of placeholders and no real detail. Beta is the actual game itself. Now the features are set with all the other little placeholders, graphics, music, and text replaced by the real stuff. Late beta is when you're bug testing the schnot out of it. Gold is the release version. Piece of advice, please have a gold release. It does no one any good if your game is in alpha for 8 years. Testing milestones. What are your milestones for testing? I mean, you can have it be that my milestones are proof of concept, alpha, or early alpha, late alpha, early beta, late beta. But it'd probably be a little better for you to actually write down something a little better that customizes itself to your game. So for the Prince Island game, I could have my testing milestones be, design of the levels from the beach to the player leaving to go save his kingdom. That's a testing milestone. I'm going to then test to make sure that those maps work. Placeholders be damned. Then the features for learning the language. I'm going to test the entire game with just the language features. Then I'm going to test the entire game with just the quest features. I probably would reverse that and do quest then language, but this is just a for instance. Testing milestones, placeholder graphics, now they work, making sure I don't bump into trees. Testing milestone, audio, to make sure all the audio cues are there, etc., etc., etc. The minimum needed for release. You want to write down here what is the bare acceptable minimum for you to go gold and release. It does not need to be when everything works properly. If you write that down, then you're going to have that 8-year alpha thing going on. Don't do that. Write down, so for the Prince one, when I can get through the entire game, learn the language with multiple ways to learn it, build my relationships, and leave the island to go save my kingdom. And everything, all the placeholders have been replaced. That's my minimum. My minimum doesn't have to be 100% bug-free. One, that doesn't exist. Two, you're going to have bugs, you're going to have hot fixes, so it's part of the dev cycle. Try to make it as bug-free as you can. It really is rude to have a buggy game go gold. And besides, this community is so big with people who will play your game, many who will stream it live and will allow you to see what your game is like with the bugs and help find them. There are people who will stream a game and you can see from the game where the breaking bugs are. Just make sure they're okay with that. They have a Humans RM test server. It's just amazing play to find people who will try to break your game. So made that minimum of release and be as bug-free as is reasonable. What's your early access plan? Do you have one? Do you have an early access plan? Do you have a way to put your game out while it's still in development so people can monetarily or psychologically and sociologically support you? If so, what's the plan? Are you going to put it out when it's in early beta and then keep it in early access for a year before going gold? Again, you need to have something there so that you're not in a perpetual state of development. You don't want that. So if you come up with your milestones and your early access plan, make sure it's something you feel you can stick to. A good dev cycle for a AAA game is anywhere between 3 and 5 years. That's 36 to 60 months. And try to go in months and not years. It's actually easier for you psychologically. It's also easier to show for potential investors. Maybe your dev cycle is a lot shorter because it's a smaller one-person game and it's 12 months. That's fine. What are each of those months? And then the marketing milestones. What are your milestones for marketing? Are you going to start marketing it the moment you come up with a proof of concept? You do that, you're risking vaporware. I personally would not start marketing my game until I'm somewhere in the early beta phase. A lot of AAA studios, though, don't even touch marketing until late beta. So maybe take a hint from them. Because at late beta, the game's coming out. It may be Cyberpunk 2077, but the game's coming out. So think of it like that. Let me catch up real quick on chat. Yeah, simple game, rescue the lost kitty, right. First started watching a couple tutorials. Yep, catching up. You sound, yeah, I sound awesome. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Tutorial on RPG Maker is a great orientation, it is. Yeah, Lambda for 8 years, cute. Are all the RPG Maker tutorials in MZ, excuse me, same things or different? Okay, Touch answered that. Sorry guys, I'm just catching up on chat here. Alpha game can be finished, buggy as it can be. Placeholders, beta, all there's there, but the bug testing is still in progress. Yeah, pretty much. You guys, anyone who's been watching Studio Blue long enough knows the dev cycle by now. All right. Hey, Banish. What about marketing and Twitter, early game gifts and such? Yeah, again, Banish, welcome to the stream, by the way. Yeah, you want to start marketing. Twitter. Getting influencers to play your game, the forums, etc. I would highly recommend you don't start marketing your game until it's in early beta. In fact, unless you're going to be working on pure dev logs from start to finish, I wouldn't even put a dev blog up until early beta, simply because only once you go from the alpha phase to the beta phase can you comfortably face the community and say, I have a game I'm putting out. If it's before that point where you transition from alpha to beta, you don't really have a game. You have an idea that you're adding features to. So again, this is only my opinion, but it is a opinion that comes from years of experience. It is best to start telling the world about your game when you're in beta. Okay, let us move on. How do I oh my god, Viatori, I'm not answering that question. I'm moving on. All right, installations and upgrades. What are your installation methods? Again, if it's RPG Maker, MV, or MZ, you literally can say unzip and run game.exe. That's fine. Write that down. If you're going to use an actual installer, write that down too. And please, for the love of all that is good, if you're going to put down an installer that forces an installation path, please let people know when they download the game. The expectations of an RPG Maker game is unzip and run. And I have had a couple of games that I've installed specifically for this YouTube channel where I've been forced to run an installer and put things in my program files C directory, and that makes me twitchy. Give me the option. Let me know. External install software. Are you going to need to use something like, well, Install Shield, because that hasn't been used for a while. Are you going to use that? Or is it going to be something internal? Are you using an external software? Like, again, I like to talk about Firehawk, otherwise known as Ace of Aces. He has a fantastic way of running an installer from the Microsoft Store. He has spent more time, well, as much time on the installer as his game, and his installer, he really should market and sell that, because it's a great way to install and update Immortal Sins. Upgrade methods, same concept, 100%. So all of that, you're writing down, hey, you install your game through an external installer? No, you just unzip it and run it. Upgrade methods, unzip and copy over. Overwrite. That's a method. Write that down in your GDD so people will know that's the only way they can upgrade your game. Rollback versions, that could be as simple as, hey, save this version you downloaded, or I have itch.io allows me to have multiple versions. Again, it seems like it's intuitive to an RPG Maker dev because we've always done it that way. But not everyone who plays RPG Maker games is an RPG Maker dev, and not everyone who plays RPG Maker games is an RPG Maker aficionado. In many ways, this right here has to assume the player has never touched an RPG Maker game before. Are there beta versions? Is there a beta branch to your game? Can the players opt into a beta branch while you're developing something that's in early access or is being versioned? Let me catch up here. The King, alpha is when you're adding features, beta when features are in place. Yes, thank you. Yes, King, that is exactly what it is. So it's best not to market your game until you're out of alpha. Because when you're out of alpha, you have a game, you just have purple trees. So good job. All right, so like, no, remember, patents have holding period for 1 year, publicly known. If you have anything, you want the patent, publicly known. Yeah, there you go. So a little bit of patent advice there. Yeah, proof of concept, you have the idea. Alpha, the idea is having its features. Beta, the details of the world, aka placeholders, are being put in place. Gold, that sucker goes live. Yeah, I just seriously ghettoed those definitions. A proposed schedule. So here's your schedule from proof of concept to alpha. So here's how many months it's going to take you to get from the idea that you have to an actual working alpha. That is, as we have mentioned a number of times, the features. A feature game. Doesn't have to have all the graphics. Those can be placeholders, placeholder sounds, placeholder text. Lorem ipsum is a wonderful thing. But what is your timeline from POC to alpha? This should be relatively short in regards to the rest of the cycle, because all you're doing from POC to alpha is you're gathering everything together and getting started to make that alpha. Alpha to beta is when you're making the alpha. Sorry, I think I misspoke earlier. Alpha to beta is the creation of the alpha. That too is not specifically very long. I'm going to spitball here, so don't anyone hold my feet to the fire. But if you have a 12-month cycle, 1 month might be POC to alpha, 3 months might be alpha to beta, maybe 2 to 3 months, and then the rest will be beta gold. You're going to spend an inordinate amount of time in beta, because that is where you're busy refining everything, checking, testing, halo testing to making sure that fixing one feature doesn't break another. And then gold to release is usually relatively short. That's when you go gold, you're saying, okay, my game's ready to ship. Let's get the marketing flying out. Let's get copies of my game out to every influencer I can. Play my game, play my game, play my game. I'm going to spam Twitter for the next 5 weeks. And then boom, release. And then post-release is fixing all the bugs, hot fixes, versioning, etc., etc. At some point, stop and move on to your next game. Lastly, the asset list. Art and animation list. This is where you just list them down. Again, linking to external libraries is fine. You don't have to put everything in the GDD, please. List down all your arts and animation that you're going to need. Every bit of art, every bit of animation. These are your action sequences for your characters in the battle system. This is your art for their walking sprites, the art for their battle sprites, the art for their falling down dead sprites, their face sprites, all of that. You know, what animations are you using in the animation tab that you made an elf kisser? All of that. That's your art and animation list. Audio and UI sounds list, same thing. All the music, all the different sounds. When they click on something, when they confirm something in the menu, when they back out of something in the menu, when they buy something, when they go to the inn, when a sword hits, when the steel sword hits, when the magic sword hits, when the mithril magical sword hits, when the mithril magical sword of mackerels hits. All those should make different sounds. Write down what those sounds are. Each spell, fire 1, fire 2, fire, oh my god. All of that. What are the sounds? Special effects lists. Okay, what are those effects? Are you using effects from Elfkisser specifically for explosions and lightning bolts? Okay, explosion 1, explosion 2, explosion 3. List them down. You know, so now we know fire 1 uses explosion 1, fire 2 uses explosion 2, fire 3 uses explosion, oh my god. All of that. You want to list these down. Code and plugin list, same thing. This list, asset list, is kind of like you're going to be populating this while you're doing everything else in the GDD. So while you're doing all of this happy nonsense, you're going to be doing that as well. and just putting in, this is your definitive asset list. And then the link, do not pull your full VA script. If you have voice actors, links to each of the script. So you want to link to the script for the main character, the supporting character, the antagonist, the dirtagonist, the secondary antagonist, the townspeople, the king, all that. Let me catch up here on chat. Oh, cool. Awesome. I got Solegna's thumbs up on that. Is there a real difference between the battle systems in every RPG Maker engine? Yeah, there's some fundamental differences between some of the major versions, like RPG Maker VX, VX Ace is very different than MV and MZ. RPG Maker 2000 and 2003, both of those were very different from each other. So yeah, there are fundamental differences between the major versions, and then the minor, like going from VX to VX Ace has some tweaks. MV to MZ has some tweaks, etc. I'm pretty sure someone can give you a list there, MLGL. There's a huge list. I know Driftwood Gaming is like one of the big ones, but I think there's also some random dude. I don't know if Echo ever did tutorials. Yeah, somebody can hook you up there. And we're done. Oh my god. Okay, I can talk to you guys directly now. So that's it. Does anyone have any specific questions about the GDD? I will do my best to answer them before my throat gives out. Wow, this is 2 hours. This is almost exactly what I quoted to you, Touch. 2 hours. Woo! I'm actually tired of the sound of my own voice. Oh my goodness. Sorry. To summarize, the game design document is an extremely complex living organism. It is going to change constantly throughout the development life cycle of your game. From the moment you start writing it to the moment that you finish your post-release and move on to your next project, you are going to write, rewrite, revise, delete, and recreate sections innumerable times. Don't be afraid of that. Do not be afraid of writing. Do not be afraid of documentation. It is an important part of game development. If you are making a small game, your game design document will probably only be about 20-30 pages. If you're making a huge epic game, it's probably going to be a couple of hundred. So, you know, this is not to scare you away. This was a lot, and I understand this feels intimidating, and that's why I urge you all to start with small projects and document those small projects. Start with your character goes and gets some coffee with his best friend, and then he gets attacked by a moth. And document it. Document what that game is. You know, go back to one of your old projects that's really short and isn't going to kill your fingers, and document that one. Documentation is what allows a person to get through something as succinctly to their original goal as possible. It is necessary. Even those who have massively eidetic memories, you're going to need to have some way of remembering what you wrote. And this becomes crucial once you have someone else following your vision as a part of your team, because no one can read your mind. Okay, catching up here. Didn't know Steel could get tired of his own voice. Thanks. Thanks, Touch. Should the DDD be one massive document? Is it okay to split up into related chunks? I highly recommend, King, that the final GDD be one document. While you're going through the life cycle phase and you're developing it, it's okay to keep it in chunks. And even better yet, if you can have a tool that kind of puts it in database format, like, again, I think Artisy Draft does that. Scrivener should probably do it as well. You know, so you're not just doing a massive Word document. Evernote also. That also can work. But you want your GDD eventually to be one document, in air quotes, so that you can find everything in one place and you can back it up to one place. So, short answer to your question, yes, it should be a massive document. Longer answer I just gave you, but you can take your time getting there. KV, yeah, if it's in the game, write it down. Thank you. Silver says, my throat hurts from listening to you. Thanks, Silver. Love you too. Carlos, first of all, thanks for the good tips. Excellent slides. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos. I appreciate it. Banna says, Making a GDD also helps you stay on track and not stray too far from your initial vision of the game. Exactly. Your vision's going to change from time to time. You're going to have, while you're creating the game, going, oh, wait, you know what? This is an even better idea. But I'd rather Studio Blue, Steel and Teal, would rather you be changing your vision based off of the fact that it enriches and makes your vision better than because you forgot something because you didn't document it. So Banish, you're on point, 100%. Good job. How do I get more tile sets? There's a lot of RPG Maker place repository for art, as Steel's voice fails. Take a game you love and practice writing a GDD for those games. Yes, yes. So like, no, that's a great idea. Don't choose a big RPG; it's going to kill your fingers. But yes, absolutely. Nowadays, I even try to make. Yes, you should. You absolutely should, Banish. As I mentioned earlier, when I was in the team that did Dracula is Dead, I wrote the GDD, and we did a GDD for it, and we had a fantastic team, and I'm pretty sure the GDD helped the team because, even Game Jam games. The one I did, Fort of Freedom, which was the Unreal Engine escape room game for the Hawktober Game Jam. I wrote like a 5-page GDD for it, and it helped a lot because I pushed myself to only do it in 7 days. Viatori says, try playing around with the engine first. Yes, you're talking about the engine for the other person. Yeah, okay. Yep, all the questions, yes. MLGL, go to the forums with your questions. They will 100% 1,000 help you. It is really, really good. The RPG Maker web forum, which I think you can actually get to from this YouTube channel, is a really good way to get extra data. I'm sorry, extra help. I'm losing my brain. I gotta go, guys. I think this is about it. Before I call it for the night, since we got a lot of new people, please look at the top of the screen and you'll see a YouTube channel link that's Studio Blue Games and a Twitch channel link. We are Studio Blue. We is myself, Steel, and my wife, Teal, who could not be here tonight because she's working. We teach the theory behind game development. We teach you why to do things a certain way. We're not very tutorial heavy, but we are very much into this is how game design best practices work, and this is a good route to follow to make your game regardless of the engine or the genre. We stream currently 3 nights a week. We're gonna start adding a 4th in for funsies. On Thursdays, we do a Game Maker forum where we talk with you all very forum style about different things that are happening in the industry and different topics of game development. We allow you all to suggest those topics. You all can tell us what you want to talk about. And during the forum proper, we actually discuss anything that's on y'all's mind. On Friday, our AMA, my wife Teal and I, we talk about whatever. We talk about gaming, we talk about anime, we talk about pop culture, we talk about anything related to game dev, and people will come to us with their questions. And on Saturdays, we do our podcast, DLC not included. We do everything from VR chat except our podcast, so you will see our virtual avatars walking around and talking to you very animatedly. And, just kind of hanging out and having fun with you all. On Wednesdays, we're going to start occasionally putting in games that we're going to play with you guys from VR chat. You don't need a VR helmet to play VR chat, by the way, so you can just watch us on Twitch, acting like fools, etc., etc. The next stream, you won't see us again except on our channel on Thursday. Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you for the thank, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Raphael. Thank you, Solegna. Thank you, KB. And then also the Discord channel up there is our the Studio Blue Discord. We are a critique-based server. If you want anything with critical feedback, pop it on there. I'm literally losing my voice, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Yeah, I love you all to death, every last one of you. Teal sends her love to you guys, too. You guys have been amazing. A huge shout-out to Touch Fuzzy for, again, and RPG Maker Web for letting us do this. We are going to go, and instead of me reading through the list, I apologize, I'm losing my voice. I'm just going to hit the outro, and then I'm gonna go drink all the hot tea and all of it. Love you guys to death. See you next time. If you like what you saw, leave a smack down the like button below, subscribe to our channel, consider supporting us on Patreon, connect with us over Facebook, Twitter, Discord. Will you see you in the next video? This is Steel out. I love you guys. Peace.